There are no words for how grateful I am I got to go on this trip and have this experience. The most important part of this trip for me was that it made me step outside my American bubble and see the world from another perspective. I had a hard time picking a focusing topic because I really wanted to study everything, and I found myself changing my mind from moment to moment. But after everything I learned on this trip, I decided it had to be the relationship between Italian history and modern Italian families and culture, because their history really defines much of their daily life. And I find that fascinating because I don't spend a lot of time commemorating over American history with my family. So I'm just going to share some thoughts and some things that I learned from the different places that we visited and the different museums and cathedrals and the different art we saw. Um, in Venice, there's canals and gondolas everywhere, and it made me wonder about the gondola drivers and if they make enough money steering gondolas all day to feed their families. And some of them seemed older, so I did some research, and yeah, they get paid pretty well and they make a fair amount of money. So, I mean, gondola driving, it's a career path in Venice, and I think that's kind of awesome. Locals and their fashion sense. Usually, modest and distinguished outfits set locals apart from tourists, from what I observed. Children play soccer and shout at each other in the dark for fun rather than playing video games and staring at their screens. And they like to accidentally kick their balls and hit the tourists as they're walking through. There's more symbolism in the Catholic Church than I thought. Like the lion is a symbol for Saint Mark, peacocks symbolize eternity, gold is a symbol of God, etc. Um, Something interesting: when people were sentenced to death in Venice, they were executed in San Marco Square, facing the clock tower. So when the children of Venetian parents, like modern times, when the children of Venetian parents say, "I'll let you see what time it is," it's a threat to be good, and it's an allusion to the history of the Venetian hangings in San Marco Square. The Bridge of Sighs is not named for a romantic reason, but because it was the bridge to prison and the last time prisoners would see the light of day. Um, Moving on to Florence, in the 1500s, Florence was the richest city in the world. It was the capital city for art and merchants. The Medici family made their palace beautiful on the inside, but modest on the outside to maintain their show of humility to the people of Florence. If you wanted to train to be an artist in Italy, you went to Florence. That was just the place to go. Florence is quite literally the art scene of Italy. The Medici family mostly lived in the Palazzo Medici Riccardi. Don't know how to say that. They also shared their gardens with the public, the Boboli Gardens, and they grew lemons and they sold them out of the Boboli Gardens. So that's just something interesting, something cultural to think about. To Italian families, oh, hold on. Back in the Boboli Gardens, I noticed that everything was left likely as it was in the 1500s. There's secret doors everywhere, and the citizens of Florence respect their history and they seem to just keep things in place, and I absolutely admire that and love that. Um, Anyways, going off of that, Italian families, pasta is not just food, it's art. There are countless types of pasta, I can't even keep track of them, and way too many steps to make it. Our instructor was very knowledgeable about Italian cuisine, oils, and wine. Like, she taught us about Chianti or Chianti, I don't know which way you say it, and its process and authentic Italian design. I noticed that our cooking teacher, talked a lot about making pasta as an act of socialization and camaraderie. as if it's an activity to be done as a family or with a group of friends. And that's very true for lots of things in Italy: art, food, etc. Everything is to be shared with friends and family. It's very different than the US. On our free day, we visited San Gimignano. It's a town famous for its lasting medieval architecture. All the Gothic architecture is like super well preserved. It's also home to famous torture museum, which is interesting. In the Tuscany area, which we went out when we went on our tour of Tuscany, I noticed that it's a really good place to observe everyday family life because there's a little bit less tourists and more families just walking around doing their everyday stuff. Also on the tour, we learned that Italians take their food and wine pairings very seriously, and you are not to mess that up. And they don't like Utahns because we don't drink wine. Just kidding. But there's some beef there. Anyways, back to Florence. The Uffizi Gallery was originally built to be a government building for the Grand Duke of Medici. We learned some more symbolism. Pregnancy is a symbol of prosperity. And in the Venus paintings, both Primavera and the Birth of Venus were in the private home of the Medici originally. So the Birth of Venus is thought to represent the birth of the beauty in Venice. Over the course of the Renaissance, Mother Mary goes from being portrayed as a queen, like very stoic, to being portrayed as a common woman, humble and more relatable towards the common people of Italy, which I thought was incredibly important to like the development of the Renaissance, etc. The reason Michelangelo was so successful as an artist was because he haggled and only took prices that he wanted. He was a good businessman as well as a brilliant artist. Our last day in Florence also taught me about patience and the interworking of high-speed trains. All right, in Rome, I learned that the Palace of Venice Square is actually founded by and was used by Mussolini. Italian locals are not fond of it, and they call it the cake or the typewriter for several different reasons. I learned that there are about 900 churches in Italy. The Trevi Fountain was built by Nicola Salvi as a celebration of water. We also observed our tour guide nearly getting arrested and learned a bit about Italian law enforcement, which was interesting. When we visited the Borghese Gallery, I kind of learned that rich families in the Renaissance time period decorated their homes with extravagant art because that's originally what that was. I actually skipped over the Sistine Chapel, but I'll go back to it now. No one wanted to paint the Sistine Chapel, actually, especially not Michelangelo. Him and the Pope used to like throw things at each other and like have fights about it. But looking at the paintings in the Sistine Chapel is literally like looking at a movie that's frozen in place. Even from way far below, you can make out the details of like many parts of the painting. It's really important to talk about Pompeii for a second since it's so correlated with like ancient family history. Pompeii is so alive, even though it has been dead for like 2,000 years. It feels like you shouldn't be there standing inside people's homes. There are some significant similarities and differences between how we lived 2,000 years ago and how we live today, and how people lived 2,000 years ago and how we live today. Sorry. Like, for example, we decorate our homes just like they did with art and gardens. We also have restaurants and bakeries like they did in the shops. Okay, really quick, in Salerno, Italians are not afraid of lightning until it's directly on top of you. We learned that. You can also buy COVID tests out of a vending machine. And when you go to the doctor, they don't ask for insurance. They just have you pay money up front. Before the video ends, I just wanted to read this thing I wrote after the trip was over really quick. It goes like this. Italy is a night owl. Italy is chaos and peace simultaneously. Italy is both wretched and prosperous. Italy is dead but alive with culture. Italy is made and broken. Italy is beautiful and soiled. On this trip, I've simultaneously had the best experiences of my life and the worst. Maybe not the worst, actually. But I just want to thank you guys for allowing me to have this opportunity and say that it was absolutely amazing. And I'm not sure I'll ever get to experience something quite as fascinating as this trip was.